welcome to Krown Countdown U, a very special Krown Countdown U. We are going to take a look at the National Interlock proposal and the proposed Northern 8 conference that has been put place by project partners David Dube and Jim Mullin. Joining me now to discuss the project is project partner and Krown Countdown U producer, Jim Mullin.
Thanks very much, Andrew. You know, there's been a lot of information and disinformation out there about the Northern 8 project. This primer will provide you with some of the facts. There are three basic components to the proposal: interlocking games that count in the standings that make them nationally accessible, with a profile of all 27 teams and 4 conferences in the pre-game show. It's all about a national conversation for exposure and growth of the game and the student athlete. The Yates, Hardy, Dunsmore, and Loney remain as championships, and we avoid tiering. Well, how do we do it? By reducing blowouts via imbalanced scheduling, where more games are played with teams of a similar strength. A made-in-Canada story which could open up playoff coverage for the conferences. But the question has to be asked: where is our sport right now in regard to television? And today, it's not great. OUA football was canceled by Sportsnet, and after both TSN and Sportsnet pulled the plug on regular season games, we know that regional games don't work. So how does the Northern 8 change this? With a pan-Canadian brand that renews the game. People will know when and where to find the game every week, with a pre-game show that covers every team in Canada. So how does it work? Top 4 play a crossover with 2 games each. The next 4 do the same. For a 5-game in-season competition, the Quebec teams can face the Can West teams in Exhibition Week. And in-conference games count for a season within a season of 5 games for everyone in the Northern 8. How does that break down into 9 weeks of television? The OUA is the big winner on 8 times with their 4 teams. Quebec has 3 teams on 5 times. Can West is on with 4 appearances, and the AUS with 1. An annual Quebec number 3 versus AUS 1 game in Week 9, which will have qualification implications in future seasons. We'll have more on that later. Now, if you want to get technical, this is one of the 10 scheduling models. You see the Can West games come up in the boxes with the Ontario games, the Quebec games, and the AUS with all the interlock. If you want to stop the video if you need to, that's the way you're going to see the detail. In the second year, we have the Northern 10. Yes, with the same 8, but we have 2 qualifiers. The conference who won the AUS RSEQ interlock game, and the top conference rep from a broader interlock featuring 4 each from Can West and the OUA. Also, the Quebec Atlantic interlock would be preserved every year while the Northern 8 or Northern 10 operates. Northern 10 scenarios. Let's explain. Say Canada West qualifies for that extra spot. We'd have a round robin of the first and second ranked teams, with the 4 teams producing 2 games. If the AUS and the OUA qualify for the last 2 spots, it's an AUS-OUA home-and-home series at the end. If it's a third team from Quebec qualifying, they play a home-and-home with Ontario. But if it's Quebec 3 and Canada West 3, the last 4 teams produce 2 games each. We have worked on scenarios for the next 10 seasons. Back to business. It's a non-profit. None of the investors are making money off this. The Northern 8 is a conference. That way the CIS can have direct oversight. And the 4 conferences would take over operation of the Northern 8 or Northern 10 in the long term. The board would be managed by the investors with proportional representation from the conferences. The nonprofit is responsible for the management of air travel, all costs and business costs associated with TV, and dispersing any profits to teams not playing in the Northern 8 series. Air costs is equal between the 8 or 10, no matter how they travel. Membership to cover air is $30,000, preferably from a sponsor or donor. Hotel and ground are not covered. Those are the basics that you need to know about Interlock and Northern 8. We know that Canada West approved the Interlock plan, but what about the other 3 conferences? We reached out to their executive directors to see if we could get any comments or an appearance on the show. Only one replied, and that was Phil Curry of the AUS, who said any and all comments regarding CIS football and the future will come jointly through the CIS Task Force.
We welcome in now project partner and CEO of Concord Group, and of course the chairman of Sportbox Entertainment Group, David Dube. David, welcome.
Nice to be here, Andrew.
The first question I have for you is, what was the original vision for the Northern Eight?
You know, Jim and I had been conversing about this for a couple of years now. We've been involved with Canada West Football and, of course, Krown Countdown U. And the vision came to say, what can we do to grow the game nationally? You know, thinking first and foremost about fans and the student athletes. And the idea of an interlock came up, so my role in it really was, aside from clearly making a commitment to be a funding partner, was really strategic. It was figuring out the practicality and the strategic vision of what does a television contract look like, what does a schedule look like, what makes a compelling case for television, because CIS has been on television before. Nationally, it's been an awfully long time. And we thought if we could come to the table with something that eliminated most of the obstacles that have been stopping it from being on television.
Why do you think the discussions haven't progressed the way that you envisioned them to?
Well, I think you'd have to ask the schools and the conferences that question, and I hope people do ask them that. Really, all we've heard is things have happened too fast. You know, where I come from, and I do understand it's different than a university setting, when you see an opportunity, and we saw a unique opportunity in 2015 in the media landscape, we wanted to take advantage of it, which means moving quickly and decisively. Some people were off-put by a meeting we had with the coaches in December. And, you know, I think people deserve an explanation for why we would meet with the coaches. We really thought these coaches are the experts. When an athletic director gets a football-specific question, who do they go to? They go to their expert, which is their head coach. We wanted to bounce ideas off them, start a conversation about it, see if there was any willingness on their part. So if an AD brought this proposal to them, they would say, I'm interested. If it wasn't going to pass muster with the coaches, we knew we had no chance. So if asking for advice offended some people, I can't really help them with that.
What has the response been like from the television networks?
Well, I can tell you this, the feedback was very clear that there was an interest in it because the media landscape has got some voids in it, unique ones this year that just happened to align, which we thought the stars were aligning perfectly to bring college football in Canada back on television. They made it exceptionally clear that it had to be the best versus the best, which made us very happy because our proposal is exactly that. It is the very best against the very best. You put your best product forward, you expose it to millions of Canadian fans who currently are watching the CFL and don't really know where these Canadian players come from. I mean, all these rosters, 196 players in the CFL, come from Canadian schools, and yet we're not exposing the product to those fans.
Are you prepared to discuss a new pitch that would see the Northern Eight in, say, 2016?
You know what? I'm always prepared to have a discussion. In fact, I welcome it. But what we need to do is make sure, if we're going to have a discussion, that didn't happen this time, that the players, the participants, need to have a bit of an attitude change. Frankly, we need behavior that is pushing the game nationally, that thinks about growing the game, and that doesn't break down into what I consider the politics of self-interest. I'd congratulate Canada West. They were very open. I know Jim was given an opportunity to discuss it with them and came away with a unanimous vote in favor of it. Ultimately, the experience thus far has been very disappointing.
Richard Boutin, though, from the Journal de Quebec asks, what do you say to those in the RSCQ who said that this process was moving too fast?
I really don't have anything to say to them. That's their statement. They clearly felt uncomfortable that it was too fast. They seem to indicate that there's merit. The issue is the speed. The opportunities in 2015, I think I've made it pretty clear today. I'll engage in a conversation with willing participants who can set aside any biases and say, can we move forward? But the real opportunity was right here, right now. Will it be there in 16? I'm not sure.
At this point, What's the future of this project?
I think that there's still tremendous potential to grow the game nationally and get it back on television and show people what it's all about. I think the student athletes deserve that experience. And I would ask those fans, and I would say, fans, if you want national television, if you want best versus the best, and student athletes, if you think you deserve that opportunity, send a letter to your AD. Have a conversation about this is a community, a football community that's got to come together to make this happen. And so that would be my challenge to our fans. And they're rabid, great fans. We just don't have enough of them. And when we expose the game to more people in this country, I think people will be stunned at how many more fans will gain.
What would you say to a fan or one of the schools from the Atlantic University Conference, the AUS? What would you say to them in terms of how can they play themselves into something on a national level like the Northern 8 or 10 was going to expose?
Well, Northern 8 was growing to Northern 10 in year 2. That was always the proposal. And so we want it to be national, but it can't be a quota system. It's got to be earn your way in, and it's the best on best. You can earn your way into this, and people will fall out of it. We may think that it's always going to be certain teams. That's not the nature of sports. So if I was in Atlantic Canada, and I know they're fervent fans of college football, and I love the coverage out east, because you know what? They're small schools, and they punch way above their weight. They'll qualify. It's not an arbitrary decision made on anyone's part. It's going to be a formula, how you get in and how you relegate it out.
Where do we go from here?
We're going to work with Canada West on how to package, market, and grow the game in Western Canada. It's a great product in Western Canada. We have tremendous parity in the conference and getting better all the time. So we're going to work with them, and I can guarantee you this, we're going to make sure 100% that it's successful and people can see the way we do things.